The night was dark, darker than any I had ever experienced. A heavy blanket of clouds obscured the moon and stars, plunging the world into an abyss of inky blackness. I had missed my last train home, and the only option left was to wait at the desolate bus stop that stood at the edge of the lonely road. As I stood there, shivering in the chilly night air, I couldn't help but wonder why I had chosen this route. It was supposed to be a shortcut through a small, forgotten town, a path rarely taken by anyone. I had heard stories about this place, about strange happenings and eerie occurrences, but I had dismissed them as mere superstitions. Now, I was beginning to doubt my decision. The bus stop was a small, weather-beaten structure, a relic from a bygone era. Its faded paint peeled away in places, revealing the rotting wood beneath. The bench was worn and creaked ominously whenever I shifted my weight. The flickering light above me cast long, wavering shadows that danced on the cracked pavement. I glanced at my watch, and the hands pointed to midnight. The bus was supposed to arrive any moment now, but there was no sign of it. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves in the nearby trees. I felt an icy shiver run down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. A distant howl pierced the stillness, sending a shudder through me. It was a lonely, mournful sound, like a wolf in search of its pack. But there were no wolves here, at least not in this part of the country. The sound seemed to come from all directions, as if the very night itself was crying out in anguish. I tried to shake off my unease, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. But then I saw her, standing on the other side of the road. She was a young woman, her long, tangled hair obscuring her face. She wore a tattered dress that billowed in the night breeze, and her pale, bare feet seemed to hover just above the ground. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the dim light, but she was still there when I opened my eyes. She stood perfectly still, like a statue, her gaze fixed on me. I couldn't see her eyes, but I could feel them, cold and piercing, as if they were drilling into my very soul. "Hey," I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you okay?" No response. She just stood there, her hair shifting in the wind like a curtain hiding her face from view. My heart began to race, and I could feel the panic rising within me. The distant howling grew louder, and I turned to see a pack of shadowy figures emerging from the darkness. They moved with an unnatural grace, their eyes glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for my phone, ready to dial 911. But when I looked back at the woman, she was gone. Vanished into thin air, as if she had never been there at all. The pack of shadowy figures drew nearer, their forms becoming more distinct. They were not human, that much was clear. Their bodies were twisted and contorted, their limbs elongated and skeletal. I stumbled back from the bus stop, my phone slipping from my hand and crashing to the ground. The figures closed in, surrounding me. Their inhuman, guttural voices whispered in my ears, words I couldn't understand, but that sent shivers down my spine. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care where I was going, as long as it was away from those nightmarish creatures. The road stretched out before me, seemingly endless, and the howling wind seemed to taunt me, urging me to go faster. But no matter how fast I ran, the figures were always there, just behind me, their unearthly voices growing louder and more menacing. I felt their icy fingers brush against my skin, sending a chill down my spine. I finally stumbled upon a small, run-down house, its windows boarded up, and its front door hanging ajar. Desperation drove me inside, and I slammed the door shut behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The interior of the house was as decrepit as its exterior. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and the air was thick with a musty, oppressive scent. I could hear the figures outside, scratching at the walls and whispering in their strange, guttural language. I searched desperately for a way out, but the windows were sealed shut, and the front door seemed impossibly heavy. The whispering grew louder, and I could feel their presence closing in on me. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they were gone. The house fell silent, and the oppressive feeling of dread lifted. I cautiously made my way to the door and pushed it open, peering outside. The night was still and quiet, the road empty and desolate. The figures had vanished, leaving no trace of their presence. I couldn't explain what had just happened, but I knew one thing for certain: I would never take that shortcut again, and I would never doubt the stories of the strange happenings in that forgotten town. As I walked away from the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something truly malevolent, something that lurked in the darkness of the night, waiting for unsuspecting travelers to cross its path. And I couldn't help but wonder if it was still out there, watching and waiting, ready to claim its next victim.